With a new invite for the Spring Apple event coming out literally minutes before I started planning this video, it looks like Apple could be dropping a brand new iPad Pro on us before too long. But despite all of those potential advancements, there is still a pretty darn good and powerful tablet out there on the market right now. What is it? It's called their last iPad Pro, and I've owned and used mine for the past year. Man, can you believe it's been a year at this point. So how has this held up in that tech eternity? Let's find out. Take that, pencil. What's up, everyone? I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. This iPad Pro and I have had a pretty long relationship, and at this point, I've used this device for hundreds of hours over the past year. It is not a stretch to say that of all of my tech, this has been the one closest to me during the entirety of my working from home odyssey. And while in the past month or so it's been replaced by the MacBook Air, I still use this quite often as my primary device for watching movies and YouTube. True story, I use this way more than any of the TVs that I own. And when I stop and think about it, the TVs that I own, they're more for like decoration at this point than actually products that are used in my house. It's kind of weird. It's like you buy the big TV and then you never use it. We've made a few follow-up videos along the way about the iPad Pro, and honestly, not too much earth-shattering stuff has changed since that last video. It was the 9-month follow-up. So we'll take this as an opportunity to refine some thoughts and experiences and really delve into if the iPad Pro even makes sense anymore with all of those M1 advancements that happened before the last holiday season. And you know what? Even though I love this thing, let's start off with the things that I haven't liked. Because I've been drinking flavored fizzy water recently, and I'm basically in a bad mood all the time. That's what gross fizzy water does. It puts you in a bad mood in perpetuity. The main thing that I don't like about the iPad wasn't something that I disliked at first. But again, the M1 Max have changed so much about how professionals can interact and use their personal consumer technology to get real work done. Long story long, the iPad's battery life. It's fine. 10 hours of usable battery life on the iPad Pro is good. Okay, that's only a half truth. 10 hours of battery life was good in early 2020. It's not that remarkable anymore. It's not that remarkable if we are looking for an Apple product to coordinate our activities. I do find, no kidding, I can tell the difference on a day when I'm using my iPad versus my MacBook Air. Yes, this will still get you through an 8-hour workday, which might not be that good of a metric anymore. Let's be frank, since working from home really became mainstream and I've been doing it for a year, the 8-hour workday, it's starting to feel like a bit of an old-fashioned topic because work apparently never ends. It apparently just never, ever ends. That means battery life has become far more important. The iPad Pro is small, it's lightweight, and it doesn't have much battery space, but it does need to have some improvements here if we're going to continue considering this and calling this whatever a quote-unquote Pro device is. We're gonna call this Pro. It's really gotta make up for itself in the battery department. The next thing I haven't liked is the file system, and we did complain about this in the last video. This is another thing that is more in line with the lineage of iPad OS operating system, in that the lineage of the iPad OS operating system comes from the mobile world and not the personal computer world. It's just that trying to keep files or backup documentation organized on the iPad, it is possible. It's just very clunky, and it's clunky enough, it introduces enough friction that I don't personally prefer to do it. Needing to move around parts of a work file system is just a huge pain in the butt. Sometimes I'll need to start a new project, and to save time, I will use the last project's documents, but copy them over with the new information instead of starting from scratch. I don't like drafting 38-page contract proposals from scratch. I like, copy and pasting in when I can. And trying to do this with the iPad is frustrating to do. On the MacBook, it's Command-C, click all the ones you want, and then drag them where they need to go. Boom, done. On Windows, it's Control-C, but it's basically the same workflow. On the iPad, you can Command-C to pick everything up, but then you've got to copy it, then you've got to click on the file, then you've got to click and hold on that file to select paste or to select move. It's not very intuitive. And we've already talked about my frustrations with transferring iPad files in previous videos. It's just every part about it is not the way that I would like the system to work. It's not impossible, and it's not even that slow. But every bit of friction added to a process makes me way less likely to use it, especially if there's a product out there that I own and is in my house and is just within arm's reach that is better. But when it comes right down to it, those are most of my negatives about the iPad Pro after the last year. iPads used to be the only real way to get significant power at this size and price point. But that's not the case anymore. These used to be a novelty that nothing else could really do the same thing that this could do in the size and price. One, you can get the iPad Air 4 for significantly less money and still get most of the same features. And two, those darn M1 MacBooks exist that are more powerful, they're better physically built, they have a better battery life, and they don't cost all that much extra. Heck, the MacBook Air is less money if you buy it refurbished when you consider the iPad and the keyboard. The pencil, I don't use the pencil all that much, so we'll just say we'll even not include that in the price. Without this, it's still the same price. And I know this is a longer section on negativity than I normally do. And I do actually really like the iPad Pro, or I wouldn't still own it. I sell tech all the time. I still have this for a reason. But the point is, the iPad Pro went from the king of the jungle to like the Viscount of the jungle. It's still good, but it's not the top dog anymore. And castles, you get at least one each, according to my quick Google search. Okay, it's not all bad. Despite those negatives, there are still a whole host of things that I've really enjoyed over the past year. And we won't go into every single specific thing that I've liked. You can find those in my previous videos to get more in-depth coverage. But let's hit the high notes on these standout features. First off, the power. I'm still really impressed with the 8-core A12Z processor that's hidden away inside of this thing. This processor, like, it's a few years old at this point, and it's nowhere near the cutting edge of what Apple is capable of. The A12Z is built off of an older 7nm technology, where Apple seems to be all in on 5nm processors, starting with the A14, which the iPad Air 4 has. Despite all of that, the iPad Pro is absolutely still one of the most powerful small computers that you can find. And yes, despite what else the internet and what else YouTube says, I consider the iPad's computers for all intents and purposes. This will run everything that you'll find on the App Store flawlessly, and what else do you need from an iPad but to run all of the iPad apps flawlessly? That's what it does, right? I don't understand how that could... What else would you need it to do? But if you do use your iPad for power tasks more normally seen in regular computers, like video editing, the iPad Pro will handle video files that other bigger computers cannot. Seriously, the only computers that I think can stand up to the iPad Pro for video editing are those M1 Macs, the new Ryzen 5000 series of mobile processors, and like super high-end video editing workstations. And a lot of those options cost significantly more than this humble tablet. And isn't it crazy that a tablet can be included in this list at all? Like, how wild is that? That's the future. Marty McFly came through here with the time machine because we're on the DeLorean in the future. I also really like the Magic Keyboard, and we'll talk more about other accessories in a second, but right now, the Magic Keyboard, it's so good. Despite how much extra it costs and how it takes the iPad into that MacBook Air realm of price, I really like this keyboard for a couple of reasons. One, I mean, the first thing that we need to talk about when you talk about a keyboard is it's great to type on. And while it's a tad small and it can be cramped for longer typing sessions, this is still, without a doubt, the best small keyboard that I've ever used. Two, on the keyboard, the trackpad is absolutely better than anything Windows currently has on any of its laptops, tablets, anything Windows makes. There are some okay trackpads out there. Nothing is as good as this. Three, that additional USB-C for charging is basically a perfect fit for the iPad. You don't think you'd be as impressed or need to use this as much, but once you start treating this iPad Pro like a work device, you'll leave it plugged in a lot of the time, and it's so much easier to have that plug be right down and out of the way instead of like right out of the side of the tablet. This keyboard, it's just so good, and by itself is still one of the absolute best tech accessory things ever made. The next thing that I've liked is connected to that keyboard in that I really like the customization that you can do and build around the iPad. The iPad Pro, more than any other Apple device, and I own quite a lot of Apple devices, is so good at being able to be built into whatever you need it to be. Want to watch a movie? Just use the iPad by itself. Need to travel and coordinate a team? Buy some kind of a cheap stand, and you've got the best front-facing camera that Apple makes. And there are LTE versions of the iPad Pro, so you can coordinate, you can have team meetings wherever you want to be. Need to work on scripts while traveling or type long emails in your house? Well, you've got the Magic Keyboard, or you can connect a Bluetooth keyboard to it, and the battery life here is still pretty good. This is the chameleon of the tech world. It blends into everything and can be used in almost every situation. Plus, if you already own a Mac and use that for your desktop computer, the iPad makes a much better second device than another Mac. If you own two Macs, one could easily be wasted and only used for very specific things that don't often come up that much. Like, you can only use one computer at a time, right? But if you own an iPad and a Mac, now you've got devices that complement instead of compete with each other. Look, Sidecar is still one of the coolest features that Apple's come up with, and carrying around an iPad and a MacBook guarantee that you can always dual screen monitor wherever you go. You don't need one of those crazy huge experimental laptops with the folding out monitors. You take these two small computers and boom, you're done. And to tie in with all that, I just really like all the accessories. Sure, okay, tech nerd Gary here. I love gadgets of all shapes and sizes, but I like it even better when those gadgets make my life better. And with the iPad Pro, there are all sorts of gadgets out there that will make your life better. You can get dongles giving you way more port options. You can get these crazy huge docks you can plug into monitors. iPads are basically Lego sets that you can build into almost anything you'd like. The next thing I've liked isn't specific to the iPad Pro, but it is one of the reasons that I think iPads are as popular as they are. It's just so easy to use. It doesn't matter what task you're trying to get done. If it's able to get done by an app, the iPad is just about the easiest way to get that accomplished. It's so easy that even the older members of my family really like using iPads, even though they don't own computers. It's as easy as tapping what you want and it opens. And because of how powerful that processor is, it'll open quickly. Using a keyboard, just set it down onto the keyboard. There you go, we've installed the keyboard. The overall philosophy of the iPad Pro is it works without thinking about it. Except that file system, but this is the happy, we're not gonna talk about the file system, this is the happy space of the video. Plus, this is so well integrated into all the other Apple products that no matter what you are trying to do across the watch, the phone, the Mac products, these all find each other and sync themselves instantly. And that's where I like this integration over other ecosystems. Yes, you can do a lot of the same things with like a Windows or with an Android ecosystem, but Apple crosscuts all potential consumer devices and it automatically finds each other. If something isn't working quite properly, you can manually sync everything too, but thankfully, that's a pretty rare occurrence. My phone, my tablet, my watch, my headphones, and my computer, they all talk to each other. That's a win for me. Next up on the iPad Pro that I really like is the display. This is probably the best display that Apple currently makes that also doesn't cost over, what? Hey, how much does the XDR display cost? Ooh, okay, so this is the only reasonably priced Apple display that looks as good as this does. Not only does this have a very bright 600 nit panel, which is brighter than the M1 MacBooks, this also has what Apple calls ProMotion technology that gives this a much faster 120 Hz refresh rate, which is faster than the MacBooks. Faster refresh rates, like, who cares, right? But that makes everything look a little smoother. And while no, it's not that much of a difference compared to what you are used to with 60 Hz panels found on those other Mac computers, this will make gaming much better, as games do generally look and play better when the screen can refresh as fast as the processor can actually execute the game. There's nothing worse than like playing a video game and you see like you've got all these specs in your computer and it says it should be doing this frame rate, but you've got like a 60 Hz monitor, so you're losing so many frames, and even though your computer could do it. This kind of saves you from that. But at the end of the day, so what, right? Look, the iPad Pro, specifically this iPad Pro, it means a lot to me. This iPad really jump-started my YouTube channel to its current level of success. And with the way that we built this over the past year, I could never be wholly unbiased in a video about the iPad Pro. But I think I've done a good job laying out the positives and the negatives after I've just used the crap out of this tablet. So, but should you buy one? Maybe? If you can find one refurbished or for a good deal, sure. But the 2018 version does 98% of what this can do and for less money, or the iPad Air can do like 95%, but for less money. Plus, Apple could blow our minds here in a couple of weeks and release a new Pro that would be worth it over this model. The 2020 iPad Pro isn't bad. It's just that there are currently better options out there for just about every single situation. But I still love you. You're still like my favorite tablet though, personally. Don't look at me like that. And if you like this video and you want to see how this tablet compares to that MacBook Air, you can find it by clicking right here. So you can go right over here and check out that specific video. And you click, 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 click. It's the movement. It's the movement. It gets me every time. Thanks for watching.